Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
GrokTALK.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK.
Welcome to GrokTALK. Here's your September 12th, 2015 Is It Really News Read. Last week we reported that Governor Rick Perry, New Hampshire campaign team, had jumped ship in pursuit of other political dinghies on which to cling. 6 days hence, speaking to the Eagle Forum in Missouri on September 11th, Perry announced that he is dropping his bid to be the Republican standard-bearer in the 2016 political reality show, otherwise known as a presidential election. We have a tremendous field, the best in a generation, Perry said, so I step aside, knowing our party is in good hands. And as long as we listen to the grassroots, the cause of conservatism will be too. I share this news with no regrets. It has been a privilege and an honor to travel this country, to speak with the American people about their hopes and dreams, to see a sense of optimism prevalent despite a season of cynical politics. Perry's move opens up the Texas primary to another Texan, Senator Ted Cruz, who stands to gain the most from Perry departure. I bet that rustles the RNC's jimmies. Seacoast Republican Women's 16th Annual Chili Fest is today, September 12th, from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Scammon Farm, 69 Portsmouth Avenue in Stratham, New Hampshire. The event is open to the public, and admission is $10 per person or $25 per family. Presidential aspirants Carly Fiorina, John Kasich, and George Pataki are expected to attend. Interviews with Fiorina and Pataki can be found in the GrokTALK archives. NHGOP chairman person Jennifer Horn will also be in attendance. I'm not sure if this is a bug or a feature, but former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu will also be available from 2:30 to 3:30, autographing copies of his book, How I Harpooned the First Bush Presidency. Oh, wait, that's not it. How I Screwed the Libertarians Over in the 2012 GOP Convention. Oh, that's not it either. How I Put New Hampshire on the Road to Becoming Massachusetts. I guess I don't know the title. He'll be there signing a book if that interests you. Just don't sign anything from him if he asks, and you should be fine. Last week on the program, we spoke with New Hampshire resident Max Ledoux, who joined us to discuss Governor Maggie Hassan and her inability to answer a question. Have you seen the recent Planned Parenthood videos released by the Center for Medical Progress? The yes or no question proved to be beyond the ability of the governor or her handlers to answer. New Hampshire Governor Maggie Hassan collects campaign donations from Planned Parenthood and has refused to investigate the organization. After a series of unfruitful exchanges with the governor's office, Max has issued a detailed right-to-know request asking for any and all communications from or to her office related to the governor and Planned Parenthood, including mentions of Center for Medical Progress, Max himself, Councilor Chris Sununu, fundraising related to Executive Councilor Chris Sununu's vote to stop taxpayer funding of 2 Planned Parenthood clinics in New Hampshire, and so on. We'll be posting the right-to-know request at GraniteRock.com sometime today, so you can read the fine print for yourselves. I'd also like to remind you that on September 21st, 40 Days for Life kicks off, and that's it for the news read. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just about a minute to start the program.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, The Rock, NHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
Welcome to GrokTALK. Oh, I can turn your microphone back up now.
Hit me again.
Hit you again.
I feel better.
Welcome to GrokTALK. Welcome. You
guys are into weird stuff this week.
Yeah, not enough caffeine, I guess. Today on the program, we welcome Gerard at Large, humble host Rich Gerard. He's going to talk to us about his race for the Manchester Board of School Committee, or School of Board Committee, or however they say it over there.
School Board.
It's not the school board, it's the Board of School Committee or something like that. Anyway. Shona Holmes, the healthcare refugee from Canada, will be back. She was on the show in April 2014. She's got another article out there in the world, and we're going to have a chat about the state of Canadian healthcare and its the promise that Obamacare provides in regard to that. And we're also going to go over some veto override day bills coming up. Veto override day is the 16th, is it? Coming up Wednesday,
Sounds
I think.
about right,
This coming Wednesday. And our current legislative consultant, Max Abramson's going to drop in, and we're going to go over those bills. I think he said there was 6 of them.
Excellent.
We have that, and we have lots of other
time
things.
for more cartoons of Haggy Masson?
Sure. All right, and but to start the show, here we are, live on Spreaker and Ustream. You can, of course, listen to this later again and over, and all our other shows on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. We are, as I said, on YouTube and Ustream, and there's always links on Facebook and Twitter. So welcome to the show. Gentlemen, Skip Murphy is with me, and Mike Rogers. I'm Steve McDonald, and we are GrokTALK, and we wanted to start the show with the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, of which there are many. So we're going to begin. Pick one, and we'll go from there.
Let's pick the bits. I say the Republican Party's choice once again to declare that it's winning by losing.
Oh, that's a very good one. Explain.
Certainly. Well, I think it was Thursday that the actual vote or failure to vote occurred, where McConnell couldn't even round up enough anti-Iran deal votes to break the filibuster to have an actual up or down vote on whether the Senate wished to support the Iran deal, which, by the way, there shouldn't be a vote on at all, because A, it's a treaty, and B, under the terms of the Caucus Surrender Bill, the administration is supposed to turn over the entire text of the agreement, side deals, back deals, front door deals, whispered conversations, etc., that comprise said deal, including deals with third parties like the IAEA, which is already unhappy with Iran's non-compliance. What a surprise. And that's even the people that are inclined to surrender to Iran. So there's been no text of the deal provided, but Obama demands a pro vote anyway. Meanwhile, McConnell allows this to go forward and, surprise, surprise, fails to rustle up enough votes to even bring it to the floor for a proper up or down, where it might get an initial down vote before Obama overrides it. And then on Friday, our Republican leadership says, it's a victory. It'll be a great issue to run on in 2016. Yeah,
like Obamacare.
If the Capitol has not been turned into a smoking radioactive hole by then.
And that could be a win. That
would be a win for the rest of the country.
Yeah, I mean, all right, we'd lose a lot of really nice monuments, okay?
They can be rebuilt.
It would look a lot like the video game Fallout 3. If you've never seen it, it's the greater D.C. area. It's pretty impressive.
Maybe we could have a new Capitol designed by an American architect this time.
And really, even though we talk about the fiasco, the Republicans have brought upon themselves. I mean, the real disaster is that, once again, the Constitution has been ruled irrelevant. And to me, we now are we see the results of hyperpartisanship, where there's fealty to your leader regardless of what your position is supposed to be. The founders believed that the only thing that would keep the Constitution together was each of the members of the three co-equal branches would fight tooth and nail for their own power and privilege. And here we see the Senate and to a large degree the House as well have given that power up to the executive branch, even as they campaign that we have to stop this imperial presidency. Well, when you give up the power of the purse, when you give up the power of impeachment, the two main tools given to you by the founders, well, then you get what you deserve, although I don't believe that this country deserves what we have voted for.
At this point, it has also given up advice and consent, because it just consents to all nominations regardless of advice to the contrary. And it has given up the power to approve treaties. There's simply nothing that the House and Senate ought to be controlling that they still control. We have lost our Constitution. You say hyperpartisanship. The Democrats are hyperpartisan. They will vote in lockstep with their president and their party platform, regardless of any individual power or the power of that branch of the government. The Republicans, on the other hand, are blamed for being hyperpartisanship, but they mostly just go along. They probably all own stock in knee pad companies at this point, because they're always on their knees, basically just giving up. Careful, I'll mention your Home Depot ad.
No. No, I mean, basically, Boehner and Mitch McConnell have decided we will not have any confrontations. We will not shut the government down. We will not do anything that they believe is going to disrupt getting the presidency in 2016. What these yahoos don't seem to understand in their Beltway bubble is that the more that they continue on this path of no opposition, those of us who voted for them because they promised to be opposition and go after these folks, we're not going to go along with this. And if they think we're all going to vote for these nitwits just because they promise stuff and that we're not watching the lack of promises fulfilled, they're absolutely nuts. Right. I, for one, will not vote for a Republican, again, that's in office that has failed to live up to their campaign promises. Not happening, folks. And I think there's, yeah.
Are you listening, Kelly and Frank?
Exactly. And I'm done with this.
And wait. If you switch that, it's Frank and Kelly.
Yeah.
Which way is sexist?
Frank and Kelly.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do that once again.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
Wait.
So,
okay.
Now,
that's our sound effect of the
I
first
hear
segment.
that McCain and
Graham
are campaigning together in the state this weekend.
Oh, gosh, the Botsy twins.
No, wait. I suspect, wait to prove this, they are campaigning without Kelly because roles are reversed. They think she's a drag on them.
Ah, that's funny. We're going to take a break now because
we only did one?
That's too funny. We're going to cover the rest of them. There's 5 or 6 more. Yeah, everybody starts talking, and that's what we're here for. So stay tuned. We will be right back after this.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK.
If you hadn't noticed, I fixed the volume problem. We were just talking about it. I'm supposed to do this, apparently.
No, on the other side. It makes you look so much more dignified.
Like this? So you can't hear me?
We can still hear you.
Yeah, not as well, though. So, Welcome back to GrokTALK. Steve McDonald, Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers. Facebook and Twitter, hey, we're there. You should be too. You probably are. And if you're not, well, that's your business. But if you are there, check us out. Look for Granite Grok.
And Ustream, YouTube.
We covered those.
So we can do it again.
And again, and again. So anyway, let's get to the rest of these. Let us not opine indefinitely on any particular one. We have like 12 minutes.
Okay.
To cover the next 5 or 6 of these things.
Okay.
Give us the best of the rest, Mr. Steve.
The stupidest one is this
funny.
is National Suicide Prevention Week. So what does the legislature in California do? They vote to legalize assisted suicide, which will add at least 1,000 suicides a year to the national toll. You can't make this stuff up. I mean,
somebody didn't check the calendar.
Somebody didn't check the calendar. You know, you're exactly right, Steve. But that's one of the stupid. It's serious, obviously.
They should have done it on National Euthanize an Old Person Week, because I'm sure they probably have one of those somewhere.
Yeah, because every day is Euthanize the Unborn Day.
The Danish probably have one of those, because don't they have assisted suicide?
Yeah, well,
some Norwegian countries.
A number of the European,
maybe.
A number of the European countries do have that, but I think that's going to be hastened with this European refugee by Islamist youths and men versus families. That's another
I just
one.
read an article somewhere, maybe it was the Federalist. Somebody was talking about how they were having second thoughts about their assisted suicide because people who got depressed, perfectly functional, productive human beings who were just having a bad couple of months, were being allowed to medically kill themselves, removing them from the economy and everything else, and that wasn't what it was intended to do. But yet that is the unintended consequence of government managing your own extermination. Like, I want to kill myself. Okay, go ahead. But that's what happens.
Yeah.
It always happens that way.
Yep. Then we have, because of our feckless Obama administration in deciding that we'll have butter instead of bombs, the U.S. Marines announced that they are now making serious studies into, how they could use foreign flag ships to deliver themselves to war zones. Because, frankly, folks, the U.S. Navy can't get it done anymore.
Is there an Uber for that? Wait a minute, I'll get us to transport. It's going to cost extra because it's an emergency.
Yeah.
Stick up your electronic sub-ether signaling device and thumb a ride on the passing Vogon freighter.
Passing Vogon freighter. Excellent.
Yep. So, and speaking
Don't
of
forget your towel.
Yeah. Okay. And here's the next thing with the U.S. Marines. Now, we all know that the social engineering that the socialists and social justice warriors have been doing in the U.S. over the last few years since Obama took office has been running through the military nowadays. And the military was told, you will allow women into almost everything. Well, the Marines have actually studied this quite a bit. And one of their big studies just came up, all-male ground combat units. Now, this is combat, where it really counts, folks. This is why we have a military, even though they only make up 10% of our military forces, those guys who actually chuck the spears. All-male ground combat units in the Marines were faster, more lethal, and less injured than units with mixed genders, according to a Marine Corps study that looked at integrating women into all service jobs. All-male squads, teams, and crews demonstrated higher performance levels on 69% of the tasks evaluated, 93 of 134, as compared to gender-integrated squads, teams, and crews. Secretary of the Navy Mabus excoriated the study, saying, you guys were discriminatory and had the results set up. And the headline that caught my eye was basically Mabus calls the Marine, comment is, what's a few dead Marines? Well, folks, when your military purpose is to kill people and break things as fast as they can without getting killed themselves, I'm sorry, that's important news. And take the social engineeringers out. Let them try this for a while. And enough of that. And I say that as a Blue Star dad who's one of 2 sons who served in the military. One served in the Marines. So we'll go with that. And without any further ado, Clinton defenders now contend Clinton's private emails from her email server help keep information more secure.
Everybody's going to be doing it now.
I have no comment to add to that headline.
Well, you're going to tell a story. You got to tell it right.
Yeah, it's like, anything to keep her safe. This is...
And you know what? I bet it created good-paying American jobs, too.
Well, it allowed somebody from the government who was already being paid by the government.
No, but I mean, I'll add that narrative. It created jobs.
Yeah.
It's created or saved jobs. Hillary's private server. Come on.
Everything's connected to everything else to make it look good.
Right.
Whether it is or not. But it's also endemic of our political posturing nowadays.
That's why if
where
you don't do anything
nothing
wrong,
is bad.
if you say you didn't do anything wrong and you refuse to apologize and then you apologize, you must be a Democrat because it's okay.
Yeah. And again, we throw out the obligatory, if this had been a Republican, what would the media be doing?
But who's she trying to appeal to? It's got to be Democrats or somebody because Republicans don't buy it.
No,
Independents aren't that stupid.
No, they're not buying this either.
The Democrats are the only ones that she needs that she's losing, and she's losing them to Sanders, and so...
Yeah, the Democrats aren't buying it either, at least not in sufficient quantities. If you look at the polls, Biden hasn't barely lifted a finger, and he's catching up on her.
Yeah, and then the socialist. Who ever thought here in the United States in this era that a socialist would start beating a person who used to be considered a centrist Democrat? I mean, we're in a world of hurt if a socialist takes over. It's like, why did we have 200 odd years of being Americans, and now we're going to use a foreign political philosophy?
Well,
this is mobocracy.
It's been pretty popular for the last 100 years or so on the left.
Well,
so.
Yeah, ever since, what's his name now? Von Clausewitz was rolling up the Prussian provinces to form Germany, and he basically beat the socialists to the punch by nationalizing retirement funds and health benefits. He figured out how to wheedle people.
Von Bismarck, was it not?
Von Bismarck, yes, that's right. I'm sorry. Clausewitz was just working for Bismarck. But basically, wheedle people's money away from them to bribe them with it back. Gosh. Sounds like a lot like America nowadays. And the last one that I have is back to California. California will give free high school diplomas to kids who flunked out. Yes, sirree. There we go. That was my quick list this morning.
Which means that it's not worth hiring a California high school graduate under any circumstances, even to flip burgers, unless you test them yourself.
Or the teachers, actually. All you really need is a lunch staff to give them their 3 free squares a day.
And you don't even need that because something I haven't posted yet. In New York, Chicago, the first fully automated restaurant. Like the old 50s automats. Well, now you type in your order, and it's cooked freshly out back, and it arrives in a thing, in a glass wall of cubicles, and when you go up, you enter in your information, the thing comes up, and you pull out your freshly cooked stuff. And pretty soon, if you get the burger machines and all that other stuff, you won't need a human at all. Thank you, $15 an hour minimum wage nitwits.
They'll have to go back to doing newspaper rounds.
Well,
that's been stolen from them too.
If you employ too many people, you don't have enough folks for your riot. So you really have to have some spare people laying around unemployed looking for something to be mad about. And so that's really what that's for.
Well, essentially, that takes away another low-end rung of the economic ladder, because I'm old enough, and you guys probably are too, you drive into a gas station, you had all these high school kids coming out checking the tires, checking the oil, checking the wipers, checking, everything, while yet another one's actually pumping the gas. All of these kids were getting minimum wage and learning their craft. That was the way how most car guys got to be car guys. And plus I remember going to the movies.
Plus, they learn how to have a job.
Yeah, you learn to show up at work. You learn to respect those in authority. You do a good job. You take pride in your work.
Proper appearance, time management, coordinating with others, working as a team, blah, blah, blah. All those things you need to learn.
And by the way, getting tips.
And dealing with customers.
Yeah. So there was
being forced to be nice to people who aren't always nice to you. It's a good skill to have.
Someone found a Trump tweet from last September.
Yes, saw that.
That's pretty awful. Every time I speak of the haters and losers, I do so with great love and affection. They can't help the fact that they are born effed up.
Ooh.
The winning response appears to have disappeared from the web. It was from the guy who has the handle Cuffy May, who said, "Gravitas, mother effers." See, I couldn't say the full word.
While Skip was drinking. He didn't spit it all over his keyboard. That was pretty impressive. Oh, yeah.
Which,
Thank you, Mike.
and let us remember again that under a lot of circumstances, Trump would not be an acceptable candidate, except he's doing something really, really important. He is drawing attention to the things that none of the political class are taking care of. And between Trump's style, like it or hate it, and the master political skills of Corey Lewandowski, the guy is absolutely crushing the field. And like I said, there are things about Trump that make me a little uneasy. But you know what? The political class, as Skip says, brought it on themselves. This is what you get for not taking care of business.
I mean, it all goes down to what I've been saying when it comes time for elections. Winning is only a precursor. It's what you do afterwards that's most important. And what we've seen lately from our Republican elected officials is that they campaign to win, and that's it. That's all they care about. And with the lack of promises kept, they've created a vacuum. And we all know that nature and politics abhor such a vacuum. And you have let him in by dint of what you haven't done, which is fulfill your promises. You haven't acted according to the philosophy that you espouse or that the party says it does. Instead, we get this fiasco, as Mike had as a WTF, concerning this real treaty that's going to have real results and that is going to have really bad things stemming from it. And Mitch McConnell standing up there, they're going to vote for us. Newsflash to Mitch McConnell and the rest of the Beltway banditos. No, we're not.
Right about now, if somebody stood up a third party that was likely to get more than about 30% of the vote, the Republicans would get zero.
If it wasn't so hard to do so, because both parties have co-joined to make it almost impossible for another party to start up, at least here in New Hampshire. Just look at well, not exactly that the Libertarians are all that well organized, but look at the hard time that they've had just to get enough votes in the right time period to be able to start a third party. Although I think that if the core conservative wing, the Liberty and Freedom wing of the party here, of the Republican Party, decided to go off on its own, and I thought a great time was when Bill O'Brien started his own caucus in the New Hampshire House. That would have been a perfect time to have started one, and they would have immediately gotten a good 30% or more of the voters here in New Hampshire. Unfortunately, that time has passed. But I think you're right, Mike. I think that there is a growing sense that there is no Democrat Party anymore. There's only socialists. And the Republican Party has now drifted to the center. And
they're the Social Democrats.
They're the Social Democrats. There is no real conservative party here in the country, and certainly not here in New Hampshire.
And notice two things. Last week I remarked when we had Corey on the phone that Trump said something that he didn't have to say, and most of the news outlets cut off.
Yep.
Not allegiance to the Republican Party, but and to the conservative principles for which it stands. How often do you hear any of the Republican leadership saying, it's about the conservative principles, folks?
Oh, I'm sorry, but
only when they're running for office.
Bingo. That's exactly right. They say it. They all declare themselves to be conservatives. I'm sorry. Lindsey Graham is not a conservative.
All right, we're going to take a break. 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 There we go. This is GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Mike Rogers and Skip Murphy. We'll be right back to talk about, hopefully, some bills.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, TheRockNHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Hey there. Hey there. Welcome to Grok Talk. Steve McDonald here with Mike Rogers, Skip Murphy. Max Abramson's en route.
Parking.
Parking in Concord. Nightmare parking in Concord. The nightmare on Main Street. Oh, sorry. There we go.
Which is still ongoing because they're still
ongoing.
Deconstructing it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they are starting to put it back together again. They are starting to pave in front of this Capitol building and moving their way further southward. But I'll tell you, I think Rick's rant of a couple of weeks ago
last week, yeah.
Perfect.
It was
absolutely
perfect. Oh, it was 2 weeks ago, you're right. Yeah, 2 weeks ago in GrokTALK, we posted it up. It was good.
Yes.
Very good. Lousy situation. Even the improvements are not improvements. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about veto override bills, hopefully, as soon as he gets here. The two that I'm aware of, or the two things that I'm aware of that need attention, specifically, three things, actually. SB 116, which is the constitutional carry bill. HB 603, which is the right to opt out of assessments. And the budget, which the governor vetoed. So those are the three that I'm familiar with. I know there's a couple more. And Max has just arrived to tell us what they are. So we're going to get into that in a minute. Remind you that you can listen to this and past programs on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeart, Radio, YouTube, and Ustream. And please check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. Just look for Granite Grok. And, of course, GraniteGrok.com, where all the greatest conservative blogging occurs in the state of New Hampshire. It's just my humble opinion. But I got to see which headset you're on there, sir. Are you on this one?
Testing.
You are. Okay. Well, welcome to the show. I mentioned three, HB 603, the budget, and SB 116. We can do them in any order you want. Whatever you want to go, just start, and we'll just try to make sure we get through all six.
Well, thanks for having me on. I've been going through Maggie Hassan's veto responses. They're always entertaining, but they're always condescending.
Nicely put.
Well, if you're gonna lie, at least tell a convincing lie. And one of the things I notice about her veto messages is not only are they dishonest, they assume that you're stupid, that you didn't read the bill. And I do read the bills, and I happen to go back through some of these bills and read the text of them. Republican bills are usually about one or two sentences. Well, I mean, they are. I'm not trying to make fun of anyone, but
they should be short and understandable.
And they are very short, and they are very understandable. But usually I think of a bill as being something like a page or 2 pages. Republican bills are usually about a sentence or two.
Yeah, unless there's like a sentence or two change in a large existing RSA, and you have to trundle through the whole thing. And
you know, we had a bill earlier this year that only changed one word. It changed the word "and" to "or," and the Health and Human Services didn't pass it. Well, it was medical. It was medical marijuana. If you have patients who are on medical marijuana, you had to, right now you have to have the symptoms of certain diseases and a diagnosis for those diseases. It can't just be symptoms or the disease. Well, if you take the same symptoms to 2 different doctors, one doctor might give you a different diagnosis. If that diagnosis isn't on the list, now you can no longer take medical marijuana. Just the change of one word, now you're on pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals have side effects, so sometimes you take one pharmaceutical, now you need to take something else to deal with the side effects for that. Now you need to take something else to deal with the side effects for that. Eventually you're on a shoebox full of medications.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about veto override day.
House bill, that's Wednesday. There'll be going to be quite a few people coming. I've had quite a few parents concerned about HB 603. But the first one is along the same lines, House Bill 332. Of course, we're very strong supporters of parental rights, and that's one of the reasons that I went up there to the State House, and one of the reasons I try to get more people involved. Hassan, so here's what House Bill 332 does. It simply says that if the school is going to have sexually oriented
explicit,
or explicit material, that they have to provide 2 weeks' notice to the parents, so the parents can come in, take a look at the material, make sure it's not obscene or objectionable. And I thought this was a very simple, straightforward bill. I thought it would just flew right through the committee, went right through the House, went right through the Senate. We only had Democrats voting against it, of course. It's just a very simple bill. Parents find something objectionable, they should have the right to pull their kid out of the class. And this one simply says it just provides notice. That's it. The law already says you can pull your child out of that class for some alternative material, but in this particular case, in New Hampshire, you don't get notice. You don't get notified. Parents are finding out after the fact what's in
and we
some
know how
of these
that
books.
works.
Yeah. You remember the
Guilford.
Yeah, we've got a list.
And the father in Bedford who was arrested for bringing up, these kids, some of them are 10 years old, they're getting exposed to some of this stuff. So here's what Hassan says. House Bill 332 would be an impediment to an adaptable learning environment, which is critical to helping our students develop the skills and critical thinking necessary for success in the 21st century economy. This is what she says. Current law requires school districts to adopt a policy allowing an exception to specific course material based on a parent's or legal guardian's determination that the material is objectionable. And that part is true. But the other problem is, if the parents don't know ahead of time, they don't know what material is coming down the pike that is going to be objectionable.
Oh, absolutely right. And this all comes down to who owns the children. And as I've blogged about before, more and more government, especially government teachers, believe they are the ones who are responsible for the children. And as a close family friend said, that's in special ed classes right now for teaching, they are being taught not to respect and not to trust the parents. This is what's being taught in the teachers' schools.
All right, let's not get too far.
So, well, this is all part of what's called democratic socialism. Somebody went on, and one of these Bernie Sanders folks went on and lectured us about democratic socialism and how it isn't what we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, democratic socialism literally is, by definition, it's the Soviet economic model. It's the Soviet economic system. But you get to vote. You get a ballot. Well, what a lot of these folks don't remember is, in the Soviet Union, Russians did have the right to vote, but you only had one party, the Communist Party. And in a lot of these safe democratic districts, you only get what the party officials give you, which are closet communists and socialists. They'd never admit to being that. But essentially you're getting the Soviet system, Soviet-style urban planning, state-run rail monopolies, state-run transit, government-run schools. They want everything.
Choose from any of these three approved socialist candidates.
And Bernie Sanders said something. I think we all understood what he was saying. But what he said was, why do we have a choice of 23 different deodorants when you have children going hungry in this country?
Yep.
Why do you have children going hungry in this country at all? 50 years of big government and the welfare warfare state, and you've still got children going hungry. In fact, we have the highest child poverty rates that we've ever had, at least since the Great Depression. So obviously big government is not working. Let's go back to what we had before. That's just my 2 cents. House Bill 449. No child support for a child over 18 pursuing a GED. So right now, if you're paying child support, you pay child support till they're 18, unless they're still in high school, and then you pay until they graduate. It's a great, wonderful day, and then when they graduate, you find out that you're not the biological father, and you're not getting any of your money back. But that's a separate issue that we need to jump into hopefully this year as we're putting bills together. But if they're pursuing a GED, frequently that means they've dropped out, then they wait till they're 18, then they start pursuing a GED. Well, why is it after someone is 18, why are parents having to continue to pay child support? So most of the time it's men, but more and more often we're finding that it's the women. When you have separation of parents, the parents separate if the father is a lawyer or he's politically well connected or he goes to the same country club as the judge. frequently the judge acting in quote-unquote the child's best interest, we're finding more and more mothers are losing primary custody of their kids and having to pay child support to the father, and sometimes the father makes more money than she does. And yet you have this incredibly bad system that doesn't work for the best interests of the kids at all. It works for the best interests of whoever spends more money on their lawyers. But again, her arguments are really poor. She essentially argued that GED programs were vitally important, and that losing child support or having child support orders end would somehow compromise the GED and HiSET. And it makes absolutely no sense. One has nothing to do with the other. It's just forcing a few more years of child support out of someone who has been struggling with child support payments for, possibly almost 2 decades. So that's another bill that sailed through, and we're wondering why this one is coming back, and the reasoning, again, is just absurd. House Bill 550 was known as the Planet Fitness Bill. New Hampshire is unique among states. Apparently, we're the only state in the nation that penalizes companies for doing an initial public offering, which is part of their growth phase. We talk about small businesses and how they grow and create jobs. Well, at some point, if they're creating enough jobs, they hit a point where they need to raise even more money. They're profitable, and they need to do an initial public offering. Well, when you go public like this and offer shares, there's a huge tax penalty in New Hampshire, and we're trying to undo this. Hassan is arguing that she's vetoing this, but she'll consider this as part of the overall budget package. She's thinking that vetoing this bill will help give her more negotiating room with the business tax cuts in budget negotiations. Now, Hassan is negotiating with Jasper and Chuck Morse, but those people aren't talking to us. I don't know if Chuck Morse is talking to the Senate, but Jasper certainly hasn't sent any communications out to us. We have no idea what they're negotiating. We're reading about it through the press. So hopefully he's not expecting members of the House to actually vote for whatever it is he's haggling out with Hassan, because it's getting less and less likely that anything is going to pass. If you don't involve actual legislators, then legislators don't vote for the deal that you come up with.
And I hope that's true.
It's not a deal if nobody's on board.
Or reads the bill.
Or if you don't even notify us, this is just something that's going to come out of the blue without any notice. And then he's going to stand up there saying, I gave you all this notice. Well, he has his own caucus with his own, whatever it is, 50 or 60 chairs and vice chairs and people he controls. And some of the rhinos, they got the Rhino Caucus on Wednesday mornings.
Rhino Caucus.
Well, it is.
We're going to take a break.
Oh, sorry.
So we'll be right back, and we'll cover the other 3 bills and get some thoughts on what they're going to pass and what they're not going to pass, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK.
We are back.
Well, I say, unfortunately, we're back.
Talking while we're on break. We always do that. GrokTALK. Steve McDonald, Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers. Our guest is Max Abramson. We're talking about veto override day legislation and the governor's reasons for vetoing the legislation and our reasons for wanting to unveto it. So, what's next?
Oh, one last point on HB House Bill 550, which is just, again, allowing New Hampshire businesses to do what every other business in the country could do. Have an initial public offering without a huge tax penalty. And what Hassan says is that the impact of this will impact future budgets without addressing how New Hampshire will pay for it. And she says that cutting taxes without offsetting the loss in revenue will jeopardize our state's ability to invest in the priorities that are critical to our state's families, business, and our future in the 21st century innovation economy. I love how she just strings all these new political buzz phrases and buzzwords together that one thing has nothing to do with the other. I wonder what's going on through her mind. Is it just string all these?
She thinks the innovation economy is exclusively powered by government. My response is, you want to balance the budget? How about cutting out some of your political hacks, bozo, and let the private economy grow instead?
She wanted to innovate by adding a new $1.5 million office for a chief operating officer to do essentially the governor's job while she flies around the world. So we suggested an efficient. Sorry, I'm just seeing that Hagi Masan sign. We suggested an efficiency improvement by just getting rid of that. That was so ridiculous. And the public's response to that was, why do you need to spend $1.5 million on a whole new government office to do the job of the governor, just so the governor can go around the country doing fundraisers for her Senate campaign and whatnot? And she hasn't even announced that she's running, I guess, with the whole... Sorry.
I've creased him up, sorry. He mentioned Hagi Masan, so I showed him my picture of the progressive Nurse Ratched Hagi Masan.
There you go.
As seen on Granite Grok a few days ago.
Sorry, Max.
Okay.
So House Bill 603, which is the one that I'm speaking on this Wednesday on the floor, very briefly.
603?
It simply recognizes a right that we already have, parents already have, which is to opt out of these federal assessments. Well, these federal assessments are being sold as skills tests. They are not skills tests of any sort.
It's an airport in here today. Sorry, there was something in the trash, and we walked in. It was like, so I had to take the trash out. But some of the little critters remained. Yeah, it isn't a skills test.
It's not a skills test. It is a test asking students their opinions, attitudes, and beliefs, and tracking those opinions, attitudes, and beliefs every year to make sure that they're pushing the whole big government indoctrination.
They're becoming proper little socialists.
The little history behind public schooling. The real reason we switched between World War I and World War II from private schooling to public schooling was not, as some people say, to help give orphans access to education. They were already going to public schools. They changed from private schooling to public schooling in order to produce reliable factory workers who wouldn't raise questions, wouldn't organize, wouldn't stand up for their rights, wouldn't stand up to the system, and they would just go along and get along with the whole system without questioning everything.
Well, except you say wouldn't organize, but the output of most of the education system these days is people conditioned to the acceptance of government unions.
Right, but government unions, by the 1940s and 50s, even to the 1960s, no one believed in the idea of government unions.
No.
They just started organizing in the late 60s and 70s, and it really was just, as far as I can see, it's just an accounting gimmick. I don't see very many real unions. I'm a union man myself. I don't see any real unions in the public sector. Certainly not the teachers' unions. They don't work for the teachers. They just come at you with this left-wing message that they push down on teachers, push down on state employees.
The whole purpose of a union is for rent-seeking, to acquire more wealth for a few at the expense of the many, especially the few at the very top, the union bosses. And that's all it comes down to. We want more money than what the ordinary economic system, free market, would give us. And that's all it's about. Unfortunately now, especially with the government unions, they've become much more of a political force with all that money, so that we see basically the tyranny of the minority. Go ahead. Let's go back to California again, like we've been doing all day.
Private sector unions.
No politician can do much nowadays by having the unions oppose them.
In private sector unions organize against the company. Public sector unions organize against the taxpayers. And that is why the taxpayers are being hurt. Now, companies that haven't unionized, especially small businesses, are being hit with a double whammy of taxes because they get hit with some of the highest business taxes in the country from the state. Then these small business owners get hit again with the highest property taxes in the country. And you get hit twice again because they own a shop and they own their own home and they're paying the highest property taxes anywhere. So it's the public sector unions about 80% of all state and local spending is, it's not construction and whatnot. It's not fixing the freeways. It's public employee pay and benefits. And most of that is going to the top. At the federal level, we have 15 layers, G1 through G15. 40% of the federal workforce is G10 or higher. So it's not even a pyramid. It's more like just the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It doesn't taper off at the top. It actually gets a little bit wider at the top. There are more people at the top. And so you have all these supervisors and deputy supervisors and managers and administrators and commissioners and so forth at the top. You have people sitting at a desk talking like we are now, but they're getting paid over $120,000 a year, and some of them over $200,000 a year, plus Cadillac plans and whatnot, medical plans and generous pension plans. Mm-hmm. And there are too many chiefs and not enough Indians. They're literally...
Wait. That's politically incorrect.
Really?
Screw political correctness. Proceed.
Yes, please do.
So here's what she says about vetoing House Bill 603. She said, if passed, House Bill 603 would discourage participation in the annual statewide assessment, violating the requirements of both federal and state law. Wrong. There's no federal law, and there's no state law that says that you have to take these. This is in response to an erroneous technical memo that came down from the State Department of Education, telling schools that you couldn't allow parents to opt out, and that it should be discouraged and frowned upon and just not allowed. So now you have parents telling their kids, well, if they half the kids and half the parents in Manchester and Nashua have opted out. New York State, they explicitly by law allow kids to opt out. They allow parents to opt their kids out of these, value-based assessments or whatever you want to call them. Checking these kids' opinions, political opinions.
Surveys.
Of a 9-year-old. I know what my political opinions were when I was 9 years old. And it has absolutely nothing to do with schooling.
It was bedtime politics, what you could eat for lunch or dinner politics.
What should get blown up, pyrotechnics. Things that have nothing to do with anything. And yet that's what they're polling. Spending an entire day... Out of 180 days, one teacher said 27 days a year are eaten up by all these different tests. So, was that leave you 153 days left? And the tests are getting worse and worse and worse and more numerous, and there are more and more standardized tests. How many standardized tests do you need? Says that it poses a significant fiscal risk by threatening tens of millions of dollars a year in federal funding because you have to have 95% participation. But where you don't have 95, is the federal government really going to pull funding? They don't do it in New York. They're not doing it in Manchester. They're not pulling anyone's funding. It's just a ridiculous thing.
If I understand it correctly, they've never pulled anyone's funding for that.
New Hampshire's economic competitiveness, this is what she says, depends on our ongoing commitment to ensuring that our students and workers have the skills needed to compete in the future.
Apparently as pollsters.
As pollsters.
Yeah.
Receiving polls, taking polls, but you can take plenty of online polls asking about your opinion. I mean, we can poll 9-year-olds on Facebook. All the newspapers.
Actually, you're not supposed to be able to poll them. They have to be at least 13. That doesn't mean there aren't 9-year-olds saying they're 13.
Yeah, but newspapers, all the online newspapers have a poll on the front page because they find that it boosts readership. People like having their opinion being asked what their opinion is on something.
Yes, they do.
I've received, and we've all received, more emails and more contacts on House Bill 603 than probably any other bill this year. I've had probably about 200, maybe 300 emails just on this one issue, and to see, we're hoping to pick up about 20, 30 Democrats needed to override Hassan's veto, but just to see the Democrats aren't even responding. They're not responding to any messages. All the people I've talked to have said, well, we've gotten a few Republicans respond to our emails and our messages, and we're getting no response from the Democrats. So it's almost like they're locking their members down again and saying, you've got to vote against this and stick with the party line. And I don't know, why would you even run? Why do people even run as Democrats if you just have to do what Steve Shurtleff tells you to do? They don't have any independence or flexibility at all.
Well, it comes back to what Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the head of the DNC, twit from Florida has basically, when asked 3 times now, what's the difference between a Democrat and a socialist, and she cannot or will not answer the question. And you all know what socialism is. It is government controlling everything, and if they could own it, they'd do it.
I don't think this will. My honest opinion about all these bills, the budget deal, everything, I don't think, even if you get an override in the House, I don't think it's going to get through the Senate. I just don't see it happening. We've already got weak-kneed Republicans in the Senate. The
Nancy
Democrats
Stiles
is an example. The Democrats, I just don't see the Democrats going, oh, okay, we're going to just ignore our decision about the narrative with regard to these education issues or whatever. And I just don't see it working. But bringing them up, having a discussion, making it public, letting people know, that's important.
People are paying attention to this one. There are going to be a lot of people watching the debate on these bills. But in response to what you said, Democratic Party's not about, nowadays isn't about social justice or social democracy. They're not cutting taxes on the working poor. Even they've gone further to the left even than the Green Party. The Green Party is a legitimate political party. Democratic Party is not a legitimate political party. What they're pushing is democratic socialism. They are pushing Soviet-style urban planning, Soviet-style controls, government control of schools, government control of healthcare. They want government control of everything because they are the government. They are the bureaucratic party. They're not pro-labor. They're not pro-worker. They don't care about blue-collar folks.
They're the government first party. That's what I call them.
They are the government party. They are the lawyer party.
Which is why government unions are so pernicious, because you set up these huge bureaucracies with unionized bureaucrats in them that then pump money right back around into keeping themselves in power.
Is there a vote on the budget? I mean, is there any way to override a veto on the budget, or are they just going to renegotiate the terms and put that before the legislators?
Well, we're still discussing whether or not we're going to support. Essentially, the Jasper budget gives the Democrats 95% of what they were demanding. Every time they gave them everything they wanted, revenue numbers would go up a little bit more, and the Democrats would walk away from the table and say, well, we want more. Then Jasper and those guys would give them everything that they wanted, and then revenue figures would go up again, and they'd walk away and say, we want even more. And they just keep going through this cycle, giving them more and more and more. And now Jasper is telling us, and Hassan seems to be indicating, that they're sitting down in secret, in these secret meetings that they're not publicizing or telling them about, that they've already come to an agreement that they're going to give the last 5%, that they're going to give the state employees who've already had 3 pay raises in the last 3 years, we couldn't afford, but now they're going to give them a 4th pay raise. After all. And then Medicaid expansion, which is the absolute last of those things, is going to be put off till next year. And they've been so dishonest and so sneaky about how they're doing it. And when you actually read the Medicaid expansion bill, they say, oh, yeah, when the feds cut it off, we'll cut it off, and that'll be the end of the program. No, that isn't true. If you read it, the way that it's worded, the message comes from the federal government to some state official, who then transmits a message to another official, who transmits a message to the governor, who then says that she's received a message saying that it's all been cut off, and then the program ends. Well, why doesn't the program end at the day that the feds cut off the funding for it?
I don't know. We're out of time.
We'll be left with a state sales tax if we don't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what they want. That is absolutely what they want. Well, Max, thank you so much for coming down and talking to us about this. We're going to talk to Shona Holmes next, the Canadian healthcare refugee. You are, of course, always welcome to stick around and spend some time as we talk to the rest of our guests. Rich Gerard's coming in studio for the 10:30 segment. We're going to talk about his race in Manchester. And that's it for this segment of GrokTALK. We'll be back in about 5 minutes with Shona Holmes. Please stick around. Don't go away. We're not leaving. I'm just wasting time till I get to the right time so that I can push the little button and everything works right. Blah, 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 blah. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson. We'll be right back.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, TheRockNHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime, on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GrokTALK.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter.
Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches! It's
GrokTALK.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK.
Welcome to GrokTALK. Here's your September 12th, 2015 Is It Really News read. Last week we reported that Governor Rick Perry, New Hampshire campaign team had jumped ship in pursuit of other political dinghies on which to cling. 6 days hence, speaking to the Eagle Forum in Missouri on September 11th, Perry announced that he is dropping his bid to be the Republican standard bearer in the 2016 political reality show, otherwise known as a presidential election. We have a tremendous field, the best in a generation, Perry said, so I step aside, knowing our party is in good hands. And as long as we listen to the grassroots, the cause of conservatism will be too. I share this news with no regrets. It has been a privilege and an honor to travel this country, to speak with the American people about their hopes and dreams, to see a sense of optimism prevalent despite a season of cynical politics. Perry's move opens up the Texas primary to another Texan, Senator Ted Cruz, who stands to gain the most from the Perry departure. I bet that rustles the RNC's jimmies. Seacoast Republican Women's 16th Annual Chili Fest is today, September 12th, from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Scammon Farm, 69 Portsmouth Avenue in Stratham, New Hampshire. The event is open to the public, and admission is $10 per person or $25 per family. Presidential aspirants Carly Fiorina, John Kasich, and George Pataki are expected to attend. Interviews with Fiorina and Pataki can be found in the GrokTALK archives. NHGOP chairman person Jennifer Horn will also be in attendance. I'm not sure if this is a bug or a feature, but former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu will also be available from 2:30 to 3:30, autographing copies of his book, How I Harpooned the First Bush Presidency. Oh, wait, that's not it. How I Screwed the Libertarians Over in the 2012 GOP Convention. Oh, that's not it either. How I Put New Hampshire on the Road to Becoming Massachusetts. I guess I don't know the title. He'll be there signing a book if that interests you. Just don't sign anything from him if he asks, and you should be fine. Last week on the program, we spoke with New Hampshire resident Max Ledoux, who joined us to discuss Governor Maggie Hassan and her inability to answer a question. Have you seen the recent Planned Parenthood videos released by the Center for Medical Progress? The yes or no question proved to be beyond the ability of the governor or her handlers to answer. New Hampshire Governor Maggie Hassan collects campaign donations from Planned Parenthood and has refused to investigate the organization. After a series of unfruitful exchanges with the governor's office, Max has issued a detailed right-to-know request asking for any and all communications from or to her office related to the governor and Planned Parenthood, including mentions of Center for Medical Progress, Max himself, Councilor Chris Sununu, fundraising related to Executive Councilor Chris Sununu's vote to stop taxpayer funding of 2 Planned Parenthood clinics in New Hampshire, and so on. We'll be posting the right-to-know request at GraniteRock.com sometime today, so you can read the fine print for yourselves. I'd also like to remind you that on September 21st, 40 Days for Life kicks off. And that's it for the news read. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just about a minute to start the program.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, TheRockNHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
Rock Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Rock Talk.
Welcome back to Grok Talk. My name is Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson, our guest from the last segment, has stuck around to continue the conversation. We'd like to remind you to check us out on Spreaker, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. We're also on YouTube and Ustream. You can see what we do at GraniteGrok.com. Bloggers extraordinary. Some of us award-winning bloggers at that. Many of us writing for other blogs and organizations across the country. And, of course, we are on Facebook and Twitter. Right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Let's move forward. Our next guest was on the show in April of 2014. She is, her tagline is, appropriately, a healthcare refugee from Canada, which is true, and she's come here given her expertise. Recently, CNS News had an article. We'd like to welcome Shona Holmes to the show. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yep, it's great to have you. I'm like, we're going to have Shona on, and I'm like, oh, wait. She's been on the show before. I got to go back and listen to that because I know we talked to you about this, and you've got a new article out here. And the thing that caught my attention was this: according to a new survey, Canada ranks last among 11 OECD countries in the last survey on how quickly Canadians can actually get to see their family physicians.
Pretty sad, isn't
it? Yes, and
in
here
fact,
we are.
The headlines of our paper just last week were for the area that I'm in, and I'm in an area with, well-populated hospitals. You were looking at approximately 2 years for most surgeries now.
Ooh, man.
Yeah.
All right, so
imagine if you needed your car fixed, and they said to you, listen, we'll see you in 2 years. How many people would do it? How many people would wait 2 years to get their car fixed? But they will to get their knee replaced or their hip done, or it just blows my mind.
But if you had to go to a government dealership to get your Moskvich fixed, you might wait 2 years.
Exactly, and that's the whole point. We can stop the interview right now.
Yep.
Do not let the government take over your health care, because that's exactly what happens.
It is horrible. So, well, obviously, the United States has embraced Obamacare. We're on this road. Is there any hope for Canada? Is there any hope for us? What do you think?
Well, you know what? I'm so frustrated because I don't really believe there is a lot of hope for Canada. You're looking at, I'm the constitutional challenger. I'm fighting the province of Ontario just for the right, just think about it for a minute, just the right to be able to purchase private health insurance or put down cash on the table in order to have myself or my family members being taken care of. And we're just not allowed to do it. It is against the law, and I and any doctor that would participate in that type of activity would be penalized very, very harshly. You're talking jail time, whatever. So, it is just amazing that they get away with it and that Canadians put up with it. But I know from the Americans that I've done a lot of work with, they won't tolerate it. And so now's the time to speak out, to stop it,
Yeah, you said, and the other half of that paragraph I was reading is that this is a growing problem in our government-run healthcare system, which focuses more and more on people into waiting rooms and local emergency departments. And the premise here is that this has become about health insurance, not health care.
Absolutely, and that's the whole thing that Obamacare was about, and the Affordable Health Care Act, if we're going to be politically correct. And I don't think people are finding it very affordable. And the other thing that I think is so important that your listeners understand is that health care to a Canadian is very, very different than health care to an American, because health care to a Canadian doesn't include dental. It doesn't include any drugs or any rehabilitative services whatsoever, eye care, hearing, anything like that. So, the average family of four pays about $15,000 a year in taxes, not to mention we've been paying over $4 a gallon for gas for years now, and the same, $4 a gallon for milk. So all of those things, every single dime you spend in Canada, a portion of your money goes to healthcare costs. And what happens when the government runs out of your money? They either tax you more or they reduce your services.
Ow, I just banged my arm on the table. So I know Mark Stein talks about this stuff a lot, being a Canadian and a New Hampshire resident to boot, and I find it very amusing to read what he writes, and it's because of the way he writes. You're right, it's awful. It's like a big joke, and it really kind of is a big joke, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's funny because the doctors will try and appease you to say, listen, it's not that bad. You'll come out right and say, what is the wait time? What am I looking at? And they'll say, well, listen, first we'll put in a recommendation you see such and such a specialist. But let's run this test first. So you're about 3 or 4 weeks to wait maybe for a certain test. I went for an MRI 10 years ago when I first started speaking out. The MRI that I needed, my wait time was 9 weeks. I was reordered that same MRI this year, and the wait time was 5 months and 20 days. So it's now gone up to almost 6 months to wait for that MRI. So, depending on whether or not it's an X-ray, you might be looking at, 3 weeks to get an X-ray. An MRI, you're looking at 6 months. So they'll send you for that test, and then when those test results are in, they'll say, okay, well, we'll just maybe need this test, and they send you for that. Nothing runs in conjunction with one another, and then finally you get to the point where they can send you to the specialist, and then they'll say, listen, if you don't hear from their office within 3 or 4 weeks, call me back and I'll get on it. Before you know it, you are over a year just waiting for the specialist to call you back. And then the government doesn't even count that time on wait times because by obligation they have to monitor what wait times are. So people can be a year getting into a specialist and then 2 years for surgery on top of that. It's criminal. It's absolute criminal.
There was an interesting parallel to what you just mentioned there about starting and stopping the clock. In the UK, they decided to monitor and publicize how long it took for people to be seen at emergency rooms. They fixed that very easily. They had the ambulances wait away from the emergency rooms and come in with the almost dead patient when there was a chance they'd get seen within the time limit.
And exactly, these are the things that need to be exposed. And you and I both know it happens. This is what they do. And you have it happening with your VA hospitals right now. And fortunately for you, the newspapers will cover the stories about the VA hospitals. Here, you don't get any coverage whatsoever of this sort of thing. It's just our dirty little secret. I think there's a faster wait time at the border for people flying over the border just to get to a hospital.
And I'm glad you brought up the VA because it is really a disaster here when we've known about the scandals that have been going on, and we know that hundreds of thousands of veterans have now passed away. And nobody's treating it. The politicians, Obama will say, well, I'm going to concentrate on this. Well, yeah, he's concentrating on that just like he's pivoting to China and pivoting on economics. Yeah, yeah, that's about the only place where he really knows how to pivot, doesn't he, Steve?
Yeah, use your hips. Okay.
But, you know what? It always comes down that government, once it takes something over, is going to try to use the stats any way that it has to. And if the stats don't make sense or they can't keep to the stats, they do everything under the radar to do it. Like, as you mentioned, the VA has just basically ripped up all of the applications or wait times and schedules and all that other stuff to where you get a black market within the government just to keep the stats right. But my real question to you is, in Canada, as we've seen over in Britain, and even though Mike is from there, I watched the NHS fiascos one after another. And one of the things that doesn't get publicized all that often is that not only is it the quality of visits going down, as you just related, but it's the quality of the staff that, frankly, you will be hearing an accent when you go to those hospitals. Are you seeing that same thing in Canada? And I mean, we already see it here in the United States where, I'm getting to that age where I have to go more and more, and it's like I got to listen hard to figure out what they're saying.
Yes, and absolutely. You get the same thing here. And the worst part about it is nobody's being held accountable. The attitude that I get when I, make any kind of ruffle is that you should just be grateful. So be quiet, be grateful. You're not paying for it, which still blows my mind when people say that. And how dare you complain? Because if you complain, then you there's 60 other people in the waiting room that would gladly take your spot. So it really sort of beats you down into a submissive state because you have no choices. I ran into a similar situation that you were talking about there with having my MRI, and I had it done at midnight because they would run appointments till midnight just trying to get everybody in after, 6-month wait. And there was such a language barrier. I could not communicate. Even the questions they asked me, there was no communicating the answers to them because it was just blank looks on their faces. They had no idea what I was saying either. And it's very frustrating, very, very frustrating, and very hard on the patient because, like I said, I tend to not be a person that just stays quiet, but when you're in that situation, you're really forced that you have to because there's no alternative.
Shauna, we're going to take a really short break. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. This is GrokTALK.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK.
Welcome back. We are talking to Canadian healthcare refugee Shauna Holmes, regaling us with the glories of Canadian healthcare and our future.
That's the sad part.
Wait, I think there we go. It's our healthcare future. Hey, I need to go to the doctor. Beating us up. All right, so, gentlemen, questions next. What do we got?
Well, when you say that you're a refugee, Shauna, are you still in Canada, but you come across the border for health care, or are you mostly just a gadfly? Or are you here?
No, I am in Canada, and, the numbers of people that are going over the border are increasing every year. Last year, there was about 57,000 Canadians that came over, and that's really only the number the government knows about, because if you're smart, you don't tell them that you've been, because you get a lot of problems when you come back to try and deal with doctors again, when you try to get back into line. And, so, yes, I'm still here, and yes, I still use the American healthcare system whenever I have to. And I feel really bad every time that I say that sort of thing, because it's not that we don't have the talent. I mean, we have very, very talented doctors here, well-trained. Most of them have been trained in the U.S., but, they're very well-trained doctors. And two of the surgeons that worked on me when I had my brain surgery in the U.S. were Canadian doctors, actually. So, America's just got to wake up. Like, they've just got to understand that this is coming their way, and if people don't think single payer is looming in your future, I got news for you. It's coming.
I want to thank you for calling into the show and commenting. I had some friends who were up in Canada, and they had their toe cut off in some terrible accident. They went to the hospital to have their toe sewed back on, and they looked at them like, in America, something's cut off, they try to put it back on and administer antibiotics and, eventually get feeling back, and there's a long rehab process. And they looked at them like they were from space,
Really?
like they'd never heard of that.
Wow.
But when you talk to the high approval ratings for Medicaid and for these countries with socialized government-run healthcare, Yeah, the approval ratings are very high for young people. Then you talk to the older folks who've been to the hospital multiple times, and the quality of care when people have actually gone through the system and gone to the doctor's office and they've been put on the long waiting lists under socialized single-payer systems. When you're forced to buy your medical insurance from the government, there's nowhere else you can go. Other people's approval rating is what keeps that monstrosity going. And it's not until you're older and you actually deal with the system that you realize that socialism just doesn't work.
Doesn't work. And the thing is the two demographics that are severely affected in our country are elderly people and premature babies. So many of our premature babies are born and put right in an ambulance and taken over the border. And if their parents don't have passports, I mean, that's my advice. Every baby shower I ever go to is I whisper, make sure you have passports. You know, and I hate to be the one that sounds like I'm looming all this bad news all the time. I don't get invited very many places anymore. But, you know, it's like have a passport, because if your baby goes over the border and you can't go with it, but people don't believe that it happens, and it does. You know, when we don't have the facilities to take care of the most vulnerable in your society, what kind of society are you? You know, it is absolutely shocking.
I mean, that was one of the arguments that I used on Granite Rock when, you know, the whole idea of Obamacare was stirring up, is that, you know, example after example of the neonatal care that is just so common here, not just in the large research hospitals, but in most mid-sized hospitals and a lot of the really small ones as well. You know, just the little confinement area that they put a preemie in, for instance, that has all of the medical technology in it that you guys don't have, and that these little ones had to be schlepped across the border because, you know, big city in Canada didn't have it. Little town over just across the border had it here in the States. It's like, what is it that we're going to do to ourselves? Where do we send our babies when that bulge in the snake that you're already going through starts coming through the U.S. system?
Exactly. And, you know, I was watching a program the other day, and a commercial came on for medical tourism in Dubai. And it was an American station, and I thought, whoa, here it comes. You know, and they're advertising Dubai is the place to go. Dubai is the place to come for your medical health care. And it's like, here it comes, because where will you send your babies or your parents or, you know, yourself? You just have no idea how, and really, let's be realistic, how affectionate is the rest of the world towards America and helping them out with their problems.
Oh, I mean, they'll take the money.
Yeah, but I mean, they all stand back and wait for you to take care of them. But, you know, do you really want to rely on them to be able to take care of you? And I just don't believe Americans will stand for it.
Do you have any help? I mean, is there any movement? I mean, obviously, you're saying you don't get invited a lot of places because, you know, I understand. Trust me, I have family members of my children's friends who haven't invited me over because they know who I am.
Yeah.
So, you know, I get that. But is there any? I know you don't think anything's going to really change, but is there a movement at all that's trying to do something?
I mean, like I said, I mean, I'm obviously like being the constitutional challenger. You know, we do try to get that movement, but there's such a pushback. And again, you know, I listened to your last segment. You're talking about unions and whatnot, and that's really who we push against here. You know, because they're motivated in order to keep the system the way it is. The nurses union, the different unions, you know, that sort of thing. They want to keep their jobs and they want to keep them the way they are. And you know, when money gets put into hospitals, you know, that's really where all the money goes. It never is patient directed, you know. So no, there isn't a massive. It's definitely changing since I spoke out 10 years ago. It certainly is changing. The movement now is, you know, the paper every single week. There was a young girl last week who was waiting for a bone marrow transplant, and she got a perfect match, absolute perfect match. And you can imagine how elated the family is. There's no hospital bed to put her in. So here she has a match, and there's nowhere to go. Now, I can't even tell you the language that spews out my mouth when I read this thing. I mean, I just scream, because it's like, how can we do this? Is there no moral, you know, ethics involved here? Is nobody saying, look, we have to help this girl? But there just isn't that, because you are just up against a bureaucratic system. And you know, that's the thing about bureaucrats. You can never put a face to them. You never know who actually is making these rules. No, just against the rules. Computer says no, and what do? Who do you fight? Where do you? And Canadians are so passive.
I mean, you bring up an important...
Except for hockey.
Except for hockey. Yeah, we get a little aggressive there, but I think it's all our frustrations coming out.
I mean, that's a great point you just made, Shona, that when something goes wrong, or if it just, or the better case, it just doesn't go quite right, who do you complain to? Because the connection between you, who should be paying for the service, and the person who is being paid to provide the service is cut with a single-payer system. Right. You don't have to care. And that's the worst part of the single-payer system. Nobody has to care. Unlike the free capitalist marketplace system where if I'm paying and I'm buying your service, you'd really better care or I'm going to go somewhere else. You're locked in. And yet all of these people who complain about capitalism, they know at the very top they can go somewhere else. There were several stories of your high-level politicians coming here for care because the Canadian system couldn't respond. Well, they had the bucks to be able to move. Well, what about the poor schlub?
Yeah, and this is the thing, and I'll even get a lot of blowback about that as well, because Canadians will say to me, well, at least you're fortunate enough to be able to afford to do that. And I mean, what this all boils down to, my husband's a hero in this story. I mean, what it all boils down to, he's the one that's working 2 jobs. He's the one that put a second mortgage on our house. He works for our local police department, so the economic status that we're in, so it's not that we had it, and we have health insurance, and I'm even blessed to have supplementary health insurance. Like, I have a private health insurance that covers my dental and my drugs and eyeglasses and all that through the police station. But, so many Canadians don't have that, but you're off work for 3 years because you can't, walk the beat in the police department because you have, a bunion. I know a fellow that's exactly what happened. I mean, what does a reasonable person do? How long do you wait? And this is the thing. And then you write your local congressperson and you say, listen, and you get the standard letter back saying, unfortunately, we don't look at individual cases. Well, you're not looking at the big picture either. So what are you doing?
Okay, we've got about a minute.
On that note.
I got about a minute. Can people reach out? Oh, well, go ahead real quick.
I just ask people when I go door to door. Once in a great while, I meet someone who still believes in socialized healthcare, and I ask them, do you believe that life and death medical decisions for you and your family should be made for you by bureaucrats and politicians who you never see and will never care if you live or die?
That's
it.
And
they said?
Yeah.
And they say, well, no. And that's when they kind of wake up and they realize what it is, the false bill of goods that they're being sold.
I liked your car repair shop analogy. That was really good. I'm going to use that. All right, so we got about 45 seconds left. Can anybody reach out to you, help you out in any way?
Well, I mean, ShonaHomes.com is my website, and people have any questions, or that by all means, and just giving me a venue like this to talk to my neighbors and letting them know what is going on, because I still want a great place to come and get my medical care. So if I can't fix things in Canada, God darn it, I'm going to fix them in America.
Well,
so,
we appreciate the help.
I appreciate you letting me have a voice. So.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. You have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye. All right. That was Shona Holmes, Canadian refugee. You heard the story. Listen to it again, and we had her on in April. It's kind of the same thing. It's rough when you got nowhere to go because you got to wait 2 years for a procedure. All right. This is GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson and Rich Gerard's in the room. We'll be right back.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. The Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Rock Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Rock Talk.
All right, welcome back. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Rogers, Mike Murphy. You like that? Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers. Max Abramson stuck around from his segment when we talked about some veto override day bills. Thanks again to Shona Holmes. And now, moving forward, we have our next guest, special treat. Haven't had him on in a while, Rich Girard.
Well, thank you.
Welcome to the program, sir.
And I thought I was hardcore introducing myself as a charter member of evilconservative.com.
Yes, right. That's you. We just we're the we're them. We're those right wing guys. You know, that's us.
Well, I do have Kimberly Morin on every Monday morning.
That helps,
I think that makes up for my shortcomings.
She writes for us as well. Yeah. So you're running for office now. Well, first of all, Gerard at Large, great show.
Thank you.
Wish I had more time to listen to it. I get 15-minute window on my way to work. You know, that's pretty much it. So. I never call in, even if I want to, because I'm going to be getting out of the car, and it's just no point. But
the joys of being in a commuter hour.
Yes, absolutely. So you're running for office in Manchester. I know why, but let's talk about that.
Well, first off, what is the actual official title? Because we had a little bit of a tussle at the beginning of the show. I said school board. You were saying something
Board of
else.
School Committee, Manchester Board of School.
Yes.
Something.
Well, the technical name of the Manchester School Board is the Board of School Committee. Just like the governing body in Manchester is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and I am running for an at-large seat on the Board of School Committee, but we'll call it the school board.
At large. It fits.
Yes. Well, you know.
Just add that to the end of your show. Gerard at Large. Never mind.
Yeah. No. Well, I talk an awful lot about education and education issues and the stupid things that school boards do around our listening area on a regular basis, and I finally
Legion is the word I would use for the epic stupidity.
Good God! But you know, we've been able to bring through the radio show a lot of attention to things that are happening at various school boards and at the state. But there's only so far you can go from behind the microphone, especially if you have administrations like you have in Manchester that are intent on keeping from the public that which is theirs to know. Keeping from the school board that which is its to know, and doing it with a certain irreverence for the law that we as citizens in this state have to spend the money and the time to go to court to enforce. I had enough, and I said if I'm really going to start to drill down on some of those areas that need to be fixed and get some changes made, I'm going to have to go back once more unto the breach.
And since you're probably already going to the meetings, you might as well just be on the
board.
board.
I said that to my wife. I said, I'll only go to the committee meetings that I'm assigned to, and I'll only go to the board meetings instead of every meeting that I go to now. So I might actually get more out of this time. More free time out of this.
Might be a more comfortable seat.
Well, it's a seat. I held its cousin. I was the first elected alderman at large in the city of Manchester. So I kind of know the territory and I know the terrain.
Well, you certainly bring up a really big problem that we have certainly talked about. I have seen it firsthand, both as a taxpayer and on my budget committee. Mm-hmm. We have Jorge Mesa Tejada, who comes on often.
Love Jorge.
Oh, absolutely. What a font of knowledge, and he's so free to mentor people.
Well,
but
when he was banned from the Hampstead School Board, we had some fun with him on the radio show. And, what do you expect from an operation that's run by Superintendent Earl F. Metzler II?
Earl of Metzler.
Oh, yes, the Earl of Metzler.
We love him.
But we touched upon it earlier today on the override votes that Max brought us. but it's a case where the school department and the teachers themselves believe they are an entity unto themselves, that they are far above us on the plane of living, and to put it bluntly, that their crap don't stink.
Well,
and what you described, that they feel perfectly capable and able to not tell stuff to anybody else because they own the children.
Right. Well, they certainly act as if they are entitled to conduct themselves as they see fit. And one of the big issues that I have with every school board that I cover, I mean, there are very few Donna Greens out there of the Timberlane Regionals. There are very few John Liscarses out there. Art Beaudry is decent on the Manchester School Board, but he's outmanned and outgunned. Deb Langton on the Manchester School Board. There are very few people who will look at the edubabble, or I should say, look at the people who just spewed the edubabble and talked in a language that nobody understands, and sit there and say, for those of us who don't know what you just said, let's try to bring it down to where we can understand it. And I'm firmly convinced that the bigger government gets, the more complicated it gets because of state and federal mandates and all of the stuff that we have to deal with now, the more they speak in a language that is designed to intimidate the elected officials into compliance with what they want, as opposed to making themselves look stupid by asking the questions that need to be asked to understand and discover the proof of what they're saying. And sometimes it's not even that hard. I mean, one of the biggest things I think we accomplished through the radio show was when Deb Livingston, the Manchester superintendent, came to the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting 2 years ago last month, and said, oh, if we don't adopt Common Core, the state says we're going to lose our state adequacy grant and federal funding. Now, okay, in Manchester, when you take federal and state funds, you're looking at over $75 million. And not one person there, not one, zero, said, what's your evidence of that? Who told you that? Where did that come from? It took me filing a right-to-know request from the radio show to say, please provide any and all communiques between you and the State Board of Education, any laws, any regs, anything that would substantiate your claim that the state will withhold not just federal funds, but state adequacy grant money. And after that all came down, they were forced to retract the statement, and Virginia Berry, who was the originator of the threat, the Commissioner of Education, had to stand down from those positions. But, I take a look at this and say it's an accountability problem, there's a transparency problem, and there's an unwillingness for people. It drives me crazy when you see school board members say, oh, yes, they're our educational leader. We should give them what they say they need to do the job. Well, if that's your position, why are you sitting on the school board?
Well, I think that goes to the point of the ordinary person, if they can get themselves elected, because let's face it, you're going to be faced with a big contingent of schoolies who are going to oppose you. Trust me, I had the same thing in my area when I said no new red shiny fire engine, and the fire engineers and firemen all rose up and joined with the schoolies because I've been hard on them. Yep. It got me out of office. I haven't been able to get back in since.
Right.
They hate me.
Right.
At least I have a good reason. But anyways, there is this this awe of professionals that seems to run rife among elected officials, that if somebody that we're paying says something, we have to accept it prima facie as being truthful. And it just drives me, you're right, it drives me crazy because I'm a simple person. Yes, my critics call me a simpleton. I'm okay with that. But if you can't answer the simple question,
right,
and then you get mad at me because I've asked the question,
right, as I've said oftentimes from my perch behind the microphone, I'm not the bad guy because I asked the question. And the people who are making me a bad guy because I asked the question are the ones who don't want to answer the question. So you have to ask yourself, why don't they want to answer the question?
Because you hate children.
I do. Especially the 5 that I have. They drive me absolutely crazy.
I was going to say, it must have been going back to school and whatever you guys are doing, everybody, the school thing, the experience.
I have a sophomore, a freshman, an 8th grader, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Because, I mean, I have 2 in college now, and I have 1 into sophomore in high school. And even just, I mean, like we were talking a couple weeks ago, that these national groups always schedule these major events like the Jackson Hole Summit, and AFP had one. It's the week or within the 2 weeks where there's no way in hell I can leave the house because my wife's a teacher. She's going back to work.
Yeah.
Why do you do this to me? This is the worst time of the year for me. And at the end of the year, same thing. They always do that. And I'm like, don't do that. Schedule them some other time because we're busy.
Yeah. I mean, and I think Steve's got a great point because they do a lot of this stuff knowing that people are busy. I mean, to me, government should be 4, 5, 6 levels down deep. And they use that against us.
Oh, sure.
And when stuff goes on, that they say, "Well, come and see us." I'm working, you nitwit.
Yeah, we'll make that behavioral survey that we're going to do our best to not tell you about, available at the guidance office during regular school hours, so that if you want to come in and see it, we won't let you take a copy. You can take a look.
Well, you have to run it on your own laptop, and by the way, we don't have no Wi-Fi or Ethernet cables to let you use it with.
Yeah.
Which brings up another thing. What is your stance about all this automated testing that you would literally have to take in the computer lab, and that never is allowable for a parent to watch and proctor?
Absolutely opposed. Absolutely opposed. Absolutely opposed. And Mayor Gatsis in Manchester has been among the leaders in the state to say we don't want to do this. And I will add my voice to that. I have been a very loud opponent of the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which is here in the state of New Hampshire. I understand state law requires a standardized test, but it doesn't have to be the Smarter Balanced test. These assessments largely are non-academic. And I really think that what we need to do is, look, this ain't rocket. By the way, let me throw something out at you. Could you please explain to me what a 21st century skill is?
That you can text while walking up the street without running into anybody, anything,
using your
or falling into a hole.
card to buy cigarettes and alcohol and not getting caught. Sorry, I turned your mic off.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Knowing what the scientific method is. A lot of young people come out of high school not knowing what the scientific method is. They've heard of it, but they don't know how to follow it.
Now, there's a reasonable answer. Aren't you unhappy that you asked the two of us?
No, I'm perfectly happy that I asked it, because here's the thing, and it's going to get to your question on testing. We have seen a complete distortion of what education needs to be, because we're in pursuit of college and career readiness in the 21st century. We have to have 21st century skills. God rest his soul, former Manchester Superintendent Tom Brennan, who used to anchor the education segment that I do each week on the show, said, employers don't want 21st century skills. They want 17th century skills. They want 18th century skills. You know what those are? He said to me. I said, what? He
Functional.
Said, they can read. They can write. They can do arithmetic. They can develop the basic skills and building blocks that will allow them to go into any work environment and learn what they need to learn so they can be productive. So now we take a look at these standardized tests, and what are they testing? In many cases, it's not the children's ability to read, to write, to do math, or any of the thing to understand, certainly not to understand history and civics, which I think ought to be added to the reading, writing, arithmetic. And that...
Sorry, it's basically a comprehension exercise in Newspeak.
Well, it's even worse than that if you take a look at some of the questions that they're being asked, because what they're really doing is they're developing psychological profiles on the kids.
All right, we're going to take a really short break. Stay tuned. We're going to come back and have some more fun. Stay tuned.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, TheRockNHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime, on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK. GrokTALk.
Welcome back to GrokTALK. We are talking to Gerard at Large's humble host, Rich Gerard, who's joined us today.
With the never humble opinion.
With the never humble opinion, because you can't have one if you want anybody to listen to you. I was thinking, you started to get to the civics part, and I was thinking, the one standardized assessment they should be forced to take, and that should affect whether or not students are allowed to pass, is the citizenship test.
Yep.
They should all have to take that. And I don't care if you're talking 3rd grade, 5th grade, 7th grade. I mean, we make fun of this because it's funny how bad things are, but in the 50s, everybody knew who was on the cabinet. They knew stuff that you ask a college graduate and they're like, Walking Dead. Yeah. It's embarrassing.
I post those kinds of videos all the time. I got another one queued up, ready to post up. We don't know our history. We don't know our Constitution. And then we wonder why this country's going to hell in a handbasket.
But that's intentional that we don't know these things.
And I've been saying that for years. That is absolutely intentional.
Of course it is.
That if you don't know your history, then anything sounds good.
Right.
And
including Bernie Sanders.
Well, yeah. I mean, we are teaching our kids to feel, not to think. If all of the teachers, as I told during Max's segment. Syndrome. Listen to this.
Good movie.
I have a close family friend who is going to get her special ed degree. Mm-hmm. She is being taught, don't trust the parents.
Of course not. We're too stupid to understand our own children and their needs.
Well, not only that, but then you look at some of this stuff of, our founders were nothing but slave owners. We're seeing the result of that in our school systems. Mm-hmm. And just because today's hypocrisy of our social justice warriors from the leftist socialists are basically trying to wipe that out, and then we wonder why we can't get anything done.
All you need to do is read one book about that, and it's, is it David Barton, The Jefferson Lies?
Yes.
The book is The Jefferson Lies. I believe it's by David Barton. Fantastic book, which will dispel the idea that Jefferson or any of them were evil slave owners, among other things. I mean, yes, some of them owned slaves, but it's not like, in the book, Barton basically says Jefferson couldn't free his slaves. It was against Virginia law.
Yeah. I mean, and they talk about Republicans and Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. Most of those were still down in the South by Democrat lawmakers.
Of course.
But again, that's the kind of history. I mean, if they talk about the bad things here, you got to talk about the bad things over here as well. And they won't do it. It is all, like you said, can they add?
Well, I'm going to pick up on something that you said, Skip, and take it a step further. They're not being taught to feel. We all have feelings. I mean, we all feel things. What they're doing is they're doing two things. They're not teaching kids to develop their ability to reason and be intellectual, so their ability to reason and use their intellect to override their feelings, when necessary and appropriate, can be done. So they're disabling the intellectual ability that we as human beings need to develop if we are to govern our passions and feelings rather than be governed by them. They are basically boiling us down to our animal instinct, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
And I see that as problematic.
I was doing a little bit of history research. The Democrats to this day continue saying, well, those Southern conservative Democrats moved over to the Republican Party in the 60s and 70s and so forth. And that isn't true. When you actually go through the list of these really prominent white supremacists and KKK members and Robert Byrd, Democratic senator from West Virginia, if you look at them, they stay in the Democratic Party. When the Republicans campaigned down south and out west and some of the areas, the little hotbeds of discrimination, they were very careful to only bring over basically, real conservatives, people who were not racist at all. The problems came up when they brought up affirmative action. During the affirmative action era, Democrats were really heavy on giving special preferences to disadvantaged minorities. They kept extending it to gays and lesbians, and then they extended it to women, and so on and so forth, so that eventually, under the affirmative action era, everyone who was in a victim class could be just about anyone. 90% of the population call themselves...
Except me.
Right, you're totally not the right guy.
You're an old white Irishman. You have no chance.
Swedish, thank you.
Swedish, sorry.
Let me build upon that and what you just said, because we've got this social justice warrior mentality that's now floated into the schools. But you brought up an important point, the fundamental building blocks. For instance, I help people with software. And when things go bump in the night or worse, bump in the day when the president comes into your office and says, why isn't this working? And to be able to do that kind of stuff, you need those little fundamental blocks, and you have to build on them, sometimes for years, to get to the point where somebody says, well, this is what's gone wrong, and you go,
of course.
Mentally, I string 10, 15 blocks together and go, I know exactly what the problem is. Go check that.
Right.
What you're saying is that we have to be doing the same thing in school at a more basic level, but creating those little fundamental blocks.
Well,
how are you, when you go on the board of school members or whatever the heck the name is?
School board.
We'll just call it the school board.
What is it that you would bring to the table that the current folks can't to get that to happen?
Let me give you an example. I was sent a clip of a community television show in Manchester that is hosted by a school board member, and that the superintendent and the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction appeared on. During that, in that clip, it was the assistant superintendent announcing that the City of Manchester schools were going to have new elementary math curriculum.
Again?
Something called InVision and something called My Math, if I remember correctly. And now I watched the school board pretty closely. And I'm not saying, I'm a pretty good goalie, but even the best goalie is going to let, a puck get by. So maybe I missed this. But I don't recall a meeting of the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, and I don't recall a meeting of the school board where there was any kind of discussion about the new math curriculum and the merits of the new math curriculum versus the old one. And here are the working committees that did their evaluations. Here's where the parents were involved or included. And here's why we're recommending this committee and the school board adopt this new curriculum so that we can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and, once again, go out and buy a bunch of new books. So to answer your question, I think what we need to do, and it feeds into my overall mission in running, is involve the public and involve the board in decisions that it should be making before these things are done. So how will I do that? I think I'll do that by asking what we're using, how did it get there, what process did it go through, and like I did on the radio show. You know why Manchester took up any discussion at all about Common Core, which ultimately led to the Manchester Academic Standards, which is a story all unto itself because it turned out to be Manchester's rewrite of Common Core, was because I grabbed people like the mayor and the chairman of the Curriculum and Instruction Committee and others, and I said, well, we keep hearing that these are voluntary standards and that they're not mandates. When has the Board of School Committee ever had a discussion about whether or not these standards should be adopted, and why are we letting the administration go forward with implementing something you guys have never discussed? So I think you have to force the conversations, Skip, and be able to bring the attention that comes with slowing down the process. But you have to understand something about government, especially schools. Okay? I want to make this. I think this is a fundamental point, because I used to be one of those guys who was angry at the slow pace of government. Why can't government work more like a business? Blah, blah, blah. Well, there are certain aspects of government that should be more like a business. The efficient operation of your highway department should be along business principles, okay? But, gee, if you're a community and you're going to contemplate whether or not you want to adopt the complete streets program or the sustainable development model of this, that, or the other thing, that is not something that should be rammed through a governing body because businesses like to do things quickly and a business wouldn't linger on all this stuff. No. There's a process that needs to be gone through. There's a public that needs to buy in. There's a public that's going to pay the bill, and there's a public that's going to, suffer the benefits or the consequences of the decision of the governing body. And I think whenever you open up the process, and it's a proper process, and people aren't simply limited to the 2 or 3 minutes they're given before their governing body, where you'll have committees that will hold hearings and take the expert testimony and actually listen to the public, even if they just happen to be dopey housewives or concerned husbands or fathers. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of the shortcomings of what is being done or what could be done and a lot of opportunities that otherwise would be unknown will come forward. And the public process is one where the public input needs to be given a fair opportunity to be heard and an honest consideration.
You're absolutely right on that. The due process. Government, to be open and transparent, has to have a process that's open
that everybody can follow.
Correct.
It's got to be you've got to be able to follow it from A to B.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to go you one further though. We see this wholesale take out and plug back in of something totally different. Mm-hmm. And like you said, nobody can tell you, does it work or not?
Right.
And I just don't understand why more school boards just don't say, well, we don't have to change for the sake of change because you tell us to change.
Right.
How about you do a couple of tests? We have our our baseline folks. We're going to take a couple of the classrooms. They're going to stay that way. Then if you want, bring in another classroom and try this thing. Right. Let's try it for 2, 3, 4 years and then assess which way is better. Yes, some people may not, if this is better, they get left behind a little bit. But if this is a disaster, then you lessen the harm to the whole. But at least then you can objectively. I come from a manufacturing background. This is what you do. You just don't switch. You take a baseline, you get your measurements, your metrics, and you say, this is what we're going to test for. Now we do a small-scale experiment. Is this more value add? And I don't see anything like that happening in education. It's all, I got this new theory. Let's put it nationwide.
Right. Well, a lot of this, though, you have to understand, and this is a local control issue. A lot of this happens because the federal government comes up with something like Race to the Top or No Child Left Behind or, America 2000 or Goals 2000. I mean, there's been any number of federal initiatives. And what
performance-based education, outcome-based education.
Outcome-based, yeah.
Well, the outcome-based education.
Refuse the money.
Well, and the only time that's ever been done was Ovid Lamontagne when he was chairman of the State Board of Education. But here's the thing. The mindset is, and we're going through this fight in Manchester, and I've got a big bullseye painted on my back because I'll stand up and I'll say, well, wait a minute, what's your evidence that more money will fix the problem? Where's your evidence of when the schools have been more funded in a manner that you like, that there was proof of what you say was going to happen? So I don't concede the premise.
We got about a minute.
Okay, I don't concede the premise that the only difference between where we are now and superior schools is spending more money. I think we need to take a good, hardcore look at what we're doing, how we're doing it, and come up with ways that we believe it would best be done before we enter into the discussion of whether or not we're quote-unquote under-resourced. And that's going to take time. And what people need to understand is if you change the way you do something in education, it's not, we're going to try it for a year or two. You have to be committed to it for a 6, 8, 12-year period of time. Because that's the way it works.
We're out of time. How do people reach you?
They reach me at gerardatlarge.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming down and talking to us.
Gentlemen, appreciate the opportunity.
All right. This is GrokTALK, and I can turn that back on for a minute so you can say goodbye to our lovely listeners. We'll be back next week, and I don't know who our guests are yet. I never really know. I kind of do this on Friday sometimes. It's just the way it works. But thanks again to everybody who came in today. Max, of course, Shona Holmes, and Rich Gerard, and we will be back next week with somebody. But in October, we're on remotes, so don't forget. We're going to be on the road at a bunch of events for Groktober, and we'll get back to that later. We'll post it up online, and that's the end of this. We're going. Goodbye. See ya. Have a nice day. What are you looking at me like that for?
Gremlins on the roof.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteGrok.com, this station, or anyone else for that matter. In accordance with Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, some of the material in this program is used under the Fair Use provision of federal copyright law. Sound effects were either created by the producers of the program, found free in the public domain, or are covered under Attribution 3.0. Most of the music on this program comes courtesy of Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.